feels like that weight has been lifted, and so I feel a lot of relief at that. You know, I wake up. I've been waking up in the morning, and just after orienting myself to the day, I think, oh, Joe Biden is president. You know, which was very different from what I used to think. You know, a lot when I wake up. Oh, another day. Oh my God. So. I don't want to get too much into this because, you know, obviously just I don't want to get into kind of anything that would be divisive, but just to name that, you know, name that sense of relief, and also a sense of gratitude that, you know, the feeling I have when I look at, you know, the people who are, you know, set to run the different departments, there's a sense of these are people who are committed to public service and committed to the public, you know, the public good, which I didn't feel a lot, you know, over these last 4 years. Also feel very grateful, just the sense that things could have gone the other way, and how, you know, what we might be dealing with if that had been the case, you know. And I feel, you know, I find it very difficult to see how democracy and the rule of law would have survived 4 more years. You know, even just looking at what happened, you know, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks, 2.5 weeks ago at the Capitol, you know, what would have happened, and how it might have been different, you know, had it not been for COVID. At least these are kind of my thoughts of how, if COVID hadn't happened, it might have been much easier, you know, for him to have, you know, got another 4 years, or even if he'd have taken on the, you know, the challenge of you know, leadership, it might have been different. So I just feel a lot of gratitude that we were able to get through this last 4 years, and, you know, with democracy and surviving, battered but surviving, you know, and the rule of law, and some sense of, you know, a real sense of joy coming out of that, and a sense of hope, you know, and of, you know, possibility, that there's enormous challenges we all face, you know, we face as a society, as a country, and as a world. You know, when we think of obviously just the coronavirus, and, you know, these next few months, and how difficult they're very likely, you know, they're going to be, probably doubtless will be, and, you know, things are going to get worse before they get better, as it were. And the challenges around, you know, the pain and the suffering of racial injustice, and kind of moving towards, you know, healing after, you know, all of the suffering of the last 400 years, really, in relation to racial injustice, the you know, economic justice, you know, the how inequality has deepened even in the last year, you know, that the most wealthy of kind of their wealth has, you know, increased enormously, and the rest of the population have, you know, in the main have, you know, stagnated or gone backwards, and, you know, facing a lot of difficulties. And, you know, we're faced with this existential crisis around climate change, and also just the deep divisions that exist in the country. You know, that a third of the people, something around that, you know, don't believe that the election was fairly conducted. You know, even though that's based on a lie, you know, there's people believe the lie. And so we're kind of living with alternate realities, different realities that we're seeing. And so that's really painful and difficult. But the thing that I think is really positive is that we're in a place where those challenges, those really deep, you know, challenges and difficulties, they're being addressed head on. They're being acknowledged. They're being named. This exists, and we need to address them. It doesn't mean that they're that we're that it's going to be easy or we're going to succeed. But I think the conditions, having overcome the difficulties, overcome come out of the last 4 years and overcome the challenges and the attempt to overturn the elections, that we're in a place to be able to address these profound questions of these profound challenges that we face. And what I want to share just for a few minutes today, and kind of invite some reflection around, if you have anything to share around it, is a kind of an inquiry about how, just reflecting on some of the things that I've shared, and that just really scratches the surface. And the question really is about how our practice and how our community, being together in community, can help us to heal our own suffering and work to heal the suffering of the world. There's ways in which, obviously, we, the fact that we're here and the fact that we meditate and we practice, there's, implicit in that is that we're attempting to heal our suffering through these teachings, through these practices. But my inquiry is really about how are there ways in which we might do that more consciously, more explicitly, more intentionally. In a way, kind of the starting point for me is that I believe these teachings and practices, what we call the Dharma, these teachings and practices of mindfulness and compassion and loving kindness and equanimity and wise speech and wise action and all of the teachings of the Eightfold Path and the heart practices can be of enormous benefit to our world, to engaging with these the challenges that I've named in our social world, in our political world. How these teachings and practices help us to engage from a place of greater wisdom, from a place of non-clinging. Maybe we're not always going to succeed in that way, but that we can consciously, our intention can be to, if we're in, working with difficulties with others, in our own lives, in our families and with our friends or in our workplaces, but even in the public realm as well, that we have the tools and the skills to be able to see where we're getting hooked, where we're getting caught up, where we're, clinging to our views and our opinions, and we can step back and we can let go, that we can bring these teachings and these practices, these skills into the world and in ways that are beneficial. And when I say these practices, I don't mean it in an exclusive way about kind of Buddhism or Buddhist teachings and practices. That's obviously what I connect most closely with and what this class is kind of most grounded in. But I feel that, what I'm talking about is very much there in kind of all of the wisdom traditions, the different religions and the different traditions that help us to, really help us to live together in more skillful and more compassionate ways, and that help us to, deal with our differences, without turning it into, conflict and war and all of those things. How can we more consciously, more intentionally, or can we more consciously and more intentionally bring our practice into our own lives, into healing our own suffering and into our world? And when I think about kind of, the challenges we face, on a collective level, and those that we face on an individual level, I see them very much as kind of two sides of the same coin. It's not, it's not that these practices are just about, healing our own suffering, and then, the world is something separate, something out there. I think very much as we heal our own hearts, we heal the world. We engage in different ways in the world by being less caught up in, in craving, in clinging, in anger, in hatred, all of that. So by healing our own hearts, by our own practices, a practice of letting go of letting go of clinging, letting go of hatred, letting go of delusion, that we heal our world. And in so far as we engage in the ways we engage in the world, we try and elect, candidates that, will act for the public good, for the well-being of all. That in doing that, we're healing, we're helping to heal our own hearts as well. So, it's very much, I see this kind of engagement in the world as a natural outgrowth, a natural outflow of our own practice, of our own kind of opening our own hearts. And I see that that community, being together in community as we are here today, that this can be, an incredibly powerful support for us in both in healing our own hearts and in healing the world. When I'm thinking back over this last year, many of us, probably most of us, were very concerned about how the elections would turn out, that it felt like, certainly to me, and I think to many of us, these felt like perhaps the most important elections of our life, that what was at stake. It did really feel to me that, and still feels to me that the democracy, the rule of law, this 244-year-old experiment in democracy was really on the line. That it was that it's actually, we learned that it's more fragile perhaps than we knew, and that with somebody determined enough, or people determined enough, it could be ended, just as we see it happening in Hungary and Poland and in other places. It's nothing, we saw happened in the 20th century. And so being aware of that and seeing the importance of the elections, last year, 2020 elections, one of the things that I wanted to do was to kind of help bring people together to support each other, in community. We called it a year of, not a year, we called it Mindful Engagement 2020. And, I was, some of the things that we did together, as a community, many of you here worked on these, efforts, but one of the things we did was to focus on the elections in the state of Wisconsin, because it was such a pivotal, has been in the recent years, such a pivotal kind of battleground state, and how, it was seen to be the margin of victory either way was likely to be very small. And by putting effort into supporting the community there, working for democracy there, that we could make a difference. And a number of us were involved. We got together, 90 or 100 people, as part of an even larger effort within the IMCW and within the wider community. And we organized a webinar with Tara Brach and Jack Cornfield and Van Jones and some of the organizers from Wisconsin. And we were able to raise, I think, $215,000 just through that webinar and the activities around that, to fund field organizers in the state. And I think we were able to fund 8 full-time field organizers, get out the vote and ensuring people voted for about 6 months or so. And in the end, I think the state was won, the Democrats won the state by, I think it was like 20,000 votes. So all that effort, along with many other efforts, made a really, really significant difference. It was only a very small margin, and it could have gone the other way. And we also, in the fall, we'd had another campaign we called Action Absorbs Anxiety, where we kind of put our energy into sending letters to, writing personal letters to irregular voters in battleground states, and over a period, I think, of 3 or 4 weeks, we wrote, I think, over 3,200 personal letters, as part of a much wider effort, to people in battleground states, and encouraging them to get out to vote. And as we know, we had the highest, largest turnout ever in the elections through all of the efforts that were going on. And so those efforts just kind of really reinforced to me the importance of sangha, the power of sangha, the power of community, of how we were able to support each other through engaging in action together. And as I look at the challenges in this, in the period ahead of us, over these coming months and coming years, the question that comes up to me is, are there ways in which we can support each other, to help us heal our own hearts and heal our world? So I'll be very explicit. I'm not talking, specifically about politics. It might manifest in the way of doing things together around, around political issues, possibly. But I'm not talking just in those terms. I'm talking more about how we can intentionally and consciously make a commitment to healing our own hearts, and how we can support each other in those commitments, in the commitments that we make. It might be, my individual commitment might be to be kinder to myself if I'm harsh and judgmental and critical towards myself, to kind of replace judgment and harshness with compassion and with kindness. It might be to be kinder in my relationship with my family members or with my partner, or it might be to engage in the world more consciously, to do something in our communities. And there's a way in which doing things together, as the examples I gave with the kind of the issues around the election, that can where we can support each other. And I think given the fact that we have over these years developed a really, I think, a really deep and loving community, you know, thinking particularly of the Center for Mindful Living, and many of the folks here have been very deeply involved in that, and all of the things, you know, the programs that we've been doing together, you know, not just the meditations and the classes, but the, you know, the storytelling and the poetry and the music and the movement and the crafts and all of the different ways we've supported each other, you know, particularly over this past year with the pandemic. And kind of what I'm inviting is a kind of a reflection and some discussion, doesn't have to be today, but, you know, kind of moving ahead about how are there ways that we can deepen our support for each other. You know, I come back to two questions that we can ask ourselves. One is, what is my deepest intention for healing or opening my own heart? And what steps might I take in that direction? You know, so each one of us, you know, we can ask ourselves, you know, what is it that can help me, you know, let go of where I might be suffering, you know, might be holding or might be clinging in certain ways. And are there ways in which we, you know, the larger community can support you in that, support each of us in healing or opening our own hearts and taking steps in that direction? And kind of in a broader sense, what is my deepest intention for bringing healing and compassion into the world? And what steps might I take towards this goal, towards that goal? You know, it could be, you know, engaging in some way in the community, or having a project or a program that we might bring to this community, you know, and saying, this is what I'm doing, you know, and this is what I'm doing for, you know, homeless people in our community or in our neighborhood, or my organization that I'm working with. Or this is work I'm doing for people who, you know, who are, you know, don't have enough to eat, or other people suffering in the community. So what I'm really, the question I'm raising is, can we by harnessing the power of community, perhaps in somewhat more explicit ways or intentional ways than we've done up to now, can we support each other? You know, one of the things that is very powerful in making any change is accountability. You know, being accountable to others, to be able to say, look, this is what I'm wanting to do in my own life, or this is a change I'm wanting to see happen. And to be able to say that to others, to be accountable to others in that way, in those ways. So I raised this really just as kind of, it's been something on my mind and on my heart, you know, in these recent days and weeks. And just kind of invite some reflection on that. If you feel, if anything comes up for you that you would like to share in the comments in the chat, maybe we'll have some more time to share together as well. I was happy to see that that Sharon was with us. I hope maybe is still with us, because Sharon is such an incredible organizer, as many of you also are, you know. And to think, I remember in IMCW about 10 or 12 years ago, a few people in the community wanted to kind of see, well, you know, are there projects that we can get together to work on as a community? And there was a kind of a forum of people coming together, a meeting, you know, physical meeting that happened. And I remember out of that, a number of projects came. And I think out of that, early stages of that came the prison work, the mindfulness in the prisons that has been going on now for over 10 years and 10 or 12 years now. And you know, it may be that something like that could, you know, I mean, I'm not assuming particular projects per se. But just invite that reflection on ways in which we can support each other as a sangha, as a community, ways in which we can, you know, be accountable to each other if we choose to do that. Ways in which we can continue to deepen community. You know, now obviously online, but as we get back, you know, hopefully in the coming months, to being together in person. So let me just pause there, and we come back and we can connect further, but we can yeah, and I'll take some time to check with the with the chat. And I notice, and I sharing that that almost half of the people have a different view about how things unfolded and in the elections and moving forward. And that's something I am conscious of, and I'm sharing from my own experience, and I'm sharing what's alive for me. And I certainly, anything I share, the intention is not to create separation or deepen division. What I think one of the things that I think is the most important challenges that I did name is to see how we can bridge the deep divisions that exist, you know, in the country about just what's happening and what we want to see happen, and to be able to talk to each other, across our differences. And I certainly welcome different views of about how not just views but also feelings that people have about what's happening. I certainly feel for myself that things have moved in a direction that will help lead us towards more truthfulness. I think hopefully towards more bridging the gap, bridging the divisions, and towards more unity, and towards more compassion. And so, you know, how we go about doing that is something I think that we can work on together, and I hope we will work on together. So let's shift into a period of meditation. So I invite you to let yourself arrive and settle. You could close your eyes if that's comfortable. Let the attention come inward. Sitting with the back straight, invite your shoulders to relax. Let the chest be open so you can breathe easily. You might consciously invite your attention to drop down out of the thinking mode, down into the body, feeling your body on the chair or the surface beneath you. making any adjustments you'd like to make to be as comfortable as you can be. And as a way of helping you settle more fully, arrive, you might just connect with your breathing. Feel the sensations of breathing in and breathing out. You could invite your breathing to deepen, taking a nice full deep in breath and a long slow out breath. Breathing in like you're inflating a balloon and releasing, letting go on the out breath. Imagine you're breathing out any stresses, any tensions, any contraction, just letting go. Breathing in, inviting a sense of calm. Releasing the out breath. Breathing in, calming the body. And breathing out, calming the mind. Letting the breath be a resource for you to come back to any time if you feel stressed or tense, just to be able to take a deeper breath or two. Or to come back to the breath as an anchor. If the mind moves off into thinking, just to come back to the breath, breathing in, breathing out. And in your own time, letting the breath settle back into its natural rhythm. And opening to your experience just as it is right now. If there's any tension or tightness, you might consciously invite a smile. The corners of your eyes, the corners of your mouth. Maybe thinking about a loved one, somebody who easily makes you feel happy and joyful. And let the smile help you settle, relax. Could let the smile be an expression of how you want to meet your experience. So if you can meet whatever's present with the attitude of a smile, kind of welcoming attitude. Just bringing awareness to what's present right now. Holding it with kindness, with care. Notice your mood or emotions right now. What's present for you right now? And can this be met and held with kindness, with care? Welcoming the guests in Rumi's words. If some resistance came up in you to what I was sharing earlier, just see if you can meet this with kindness, meet it with kindness. Just make space for it, allow it. If there's joy, relief, gratitude, just allow space for that in the same way. Sharing the words of Martha Postlethwaite. Do not try to save the whole world or do anything grandiose. Instead, create a clearing in the dense forest of your life and wait there patiently until the song that is yours alone to sing falls into your open, cupped hands and you recognize and greet it. Only then will you know how to give yourself to this world so worthy of rescue. So taking this time, taking this space, creating this space, this clearing in the busyness and the bustle and hustle of life, creating a space for whatever is present. Can I hold this and this with kindness, with care? And what happens when I meet my experience, when I meet this moment? Just as it is, without resistance, without judgment, with acceptance. Out of that compassionate awareness can come insight. The insight that nothing can be held onto as I or mine. The insight that everything is changing. Perhaps the insight into the lack of a sense of a solid, permanent self. Perhaps insight into our connection with all of life, with all beings. then we can go back into our lives with greater insight, with deeper compassion. Only then will you be able to go back Only then will you know how to give yourself to this world so worthy of rescue. And if it's helpful, you might just let your attention rest on your breath, your breathing, letting that be a home base, helping you just ground yourself in being here. When the mind goes off into thought, to be able to kindly and gently come back. Can this compassionate, this loving awareness be large enough to hold whatever you're experiencing? Even if it seems very, very large or very deep or very painful, can this be held too in compassion, in kindness, in care? And sensing too this field of community that we're all in together, this field of shared intentions, intention to be present, to be kind, to care. Feeling yourself held in this field of loving kindness and compassion. And recognizing and celebrating that this community can hold different viewpoints, different beliefs, that this can all be held in compassion and in kindness, and that the teachings support us in sharing our views and our differences in compassionate and skillful ways, that we can train our hearts and our minds to do this. So it's not something to be feared, but something from which we can grow and learn. Holding your experience in kindness, holding all our experience in kindness, with acceptance. Coming back, beginning again in any moment. So whatever comes up for us, whatever emotions and mind states and physical sensations, feelings, the invitation to hold them all with kindness. Let them come, let them be, let them go. And this training of the mind, expanding our kind of range of tolerance, our ability to hold our experience, hold other people's, help others hold their difficult experiences. Training the heart, training the mind in awareness and compassion. Finish with this poem by Rainer Maria Rilke. Sometimes a man stands up during supper and walks outdoors and keeps on walking because of a church that stands somewhere in the east. And his children say blessings on him as if he were dead. And another man who remains inside his own house dies there, inside the dishes and in the glasses, so that his children have to go far out into the world toward that same church which he forgot. We will take the opportunity today, we didn't do it last week, but take the opportunity today to share kind of what's alive for us in some small groups. The invitation today would be just to share what's present for you. It might be something that came up around what I was sharing before the meditation, or anything that came up in the meditation. Just a few guidelines about when we do go into groups. One is just to speak as much as we can from our own hearts and our own experience. It would be an opportunity to share, each person in turn, for about three minutes. So speak about what's alive for you in the moment, from your heart and from your own experience. And so not so much about philosophical sharing or long storytelling. Try on new ideas or ways of doing things, but that might not be what you prefer or you're familiar with. If somebody offers something that's very different to what you think, see if you can hold that with kindness. Be aware of your experience, as you're talking or as you're listening. Sometimes we can unconsciously cause suffering or harm to others. and sometimes that can come from not being aware of the difference between the intent of what we're saying and the impact, and that sometimes our intentions might be, just to, might be kind, but the impact of what we're sharing might land on somebody else in a way that could cause them some pain. So try and be aware of impact as well as intention. Yeah, and just be conscious. Somebody brought up something was triggered in the last couple of weeks in the sharing in groups. So I wanted to just invite some consciousness. And one thing also to share is that anything that somebody shares in a group should be treated confidentially. Can learn from it and integrate what people share, but treat it as confidential. To be kept within the group. So what I'd invite us to do is we'll take about 15 minutes, and Pat, if we maybe share in the group for about 3 minutes each, and maybe have a couple of minutes afterwards for just some general back and forth. Maybe about 12 minutes, Pat, as I think about it. If they're groups of 3 or 4, be about 3 minutes apiece. And then we'll come back. Thank you, Pat.
I'm going to open up all the rooms. You're going to have to unmute when you get into your room. You don't have to go to a room. You can stay in the main room. If you do stay in the main room, you might want to just turn your video off. So I'm going to open the rooms now.
One of the things that came to me was just in the last few minutes was, if there was interest in the community in kind of taking action around climate change, for example, in terms of doing things in our own lives and making commitments to what we're going to do and being accountable for that, and that together we would, it could make a lot of difference. So just as and it might be we do certain things together. It's just a kind of a thought that came up of like, it's just very, very powerful the way that community, it can multiply our outcome, the impact of what we do by doing it together. And there's so many different, like in the brain, there's so many different kind of synapses and things going in different directions and networks of how many combinations of 2 or 3 or 4 are there among 100 people. I have to do the math of that. It'd take me a bit, but it's lots of different networks and different kind of lots of creativity. Anyway, maybe just take a few. Let's see how we're doing. We're doing okay on time. I think we're going to survive today without some movement. Emily had something else she had to go to, and so hopefully we'll be back next week, but we'll maybe take a few minutes to hear if anyone would like to share anything that came up for you, anything that is on your mind, is on your heart. You'd like to share, or any questions or anything. Julie.
Someone in my group said that Wednesday felt like a near miss accident, where it's like, oh, and then afterwards there's all this stress and tension. And I thought that is such a helpful analogy, because it can be good, but it can be anxiety producing and a letdown all at the same time. And I just want to thank you, as always, Hugh, for creating this space where we can think about how we're doing during these really interesting times. So thank you again.
Thank you, Julie. Yeah. Yeah, it's certainly, certainly unusual times. And, it's a challenge just to, what was being shared in the chat. And I didn't have a chance to look at everything yet, but there is so much division. There are so many divisions. And yet it's important that we speak from our hearts. And, sometimes it won't be easy. And I do want to be clear, I don't have the intention to every week be talking about politics, and that's not my, the way I look at it is, if there are things that we need to do or want to do in that area, then as we did with the mindful engagement, we have a forum that we can set up to do that. But there's also ways in which, the world is part of our lives and our lives are part of the world. And so doing that in a way that feels appropriate and as skillful as possible is my aspiration. One of the things that I think we may get back to is the possibility that politics might be boring again. Marina's given a thumbs up on that we don't have to kind of be worried about it each day of, on tenterhooks, that we can, oh yeah, I've actually felt that sometimes. Okay, there are some grown-ups taking care of business, I don't have to be kind of hyper vigilant to make sure that the car's still going in the right direction, so I think there's something to be said for politics being boring, because there is a certain amount of sausage making, and sausage making is very interesting to sausage makers, but not necessarily to everybody, so that we don't necessarily all need to be kind of hyper focused on it, and just business can kind of tick along, hopefully. But yeah. And hey, Bob.
Yeah,
Bob's out.
yeah. Just a quick, because I heard something sort of profound in my group that I wanted to share, and it had to do with taking this all back to the heart. And the sharing was that this person was remembering how they felt during the last election when their preferred candidate lost, and many of us will remember that feeling. But the insight was, there are a lot of people in this country right now that are feeling that on the other side. And we can connect to and feel compassion and empathy for that, without, of course, in any way agreeing or disagreeing, or that's not putting down our sense of accountability or justice or anything else, but it's coming back to the heart. And the thing that I thought was, that is a path, a hard one, a slow one, but a path to try to, bring some more unity and community to this country and this world. And I think, without getting political, and I think he was trying not to be political when he said this, that's what our president now, who's been elected, has asked us to do, to try to unify. But I just thought it was profound to think about, go back to the core feelings we have, observe them, recognize them, and then empathize and realize that others are feeling those same things, albeit in a different way.
Lovely. Thank you, Bob. Yeah, I think that's really important. There was, we get so caught up in the issues and what we care about and our beliefs and who we support, and that obviously is important. And I stressed in what I was saying that what was at stake was, I think, was extraordinarily important. And yet, what you're speaking to, and the person in your group was speaking to, of coming back to the heart, is so important. I come back to this thought that if I'm walking down the path or on the road and somebody's lying on the side of the road in pain, the last thing I would do to that with them is say, before I see if I can help you, I want to know who you voted for in November. You know, I mean, that's the last thing we would do. We would help, we would do whatever we can or whatever we could to help the person. And that caring and that compassion goes deeper than our differences, I think. You know, our differences seem to be so chasm-like, you know, so deep, and yet what we have in common is so much deeper than that. And that, I think what you're sharing really is it really speaks to that, Bob. And so thank you for that. And Laura, you and your cat want to speak?
Yeah, my cat really likes to make an appearance. What you just said is so true, but I heard a nurse talk who's been working in ICU, and how the rhetoric and the lies are others' truths, that they wouldn't even believe that they are dying, and refuse the last opportunity to reach out to people who, you know, their family, their loved ones, because they don't believe they truly have COVID, because they don't believe that COVID is real. And so, yes, I think that the human response is to bring compassion to those that are in pain and that are hurt. But I feel for those frontline workers who do that on a daily basis and are being received with anger and an alternate reality. It's a deep, deep concern, and it's not something we can ignore. I don't know how do you combat alternate realities and alternate truths and alternate facts for the 75 million people who were bamboozled. There's, you know, there is truth, and I don't know how that is undone. That gives me pause and concern, and worry moving forward.
Yeah, I hear you, Laura, and I share those concerns as well. I don't think it's going to be easy, because the you know, the dishonesty has been so consistent, and people have been told over and over again, and they have come to believe things that just are not true, and so I think we have to carry on with, you know, keep on speaking the truth as best as we know it, and holding both, you know, the need to, you know, take strong action and care about what we care about, but keep our hearts open, as, you know, as Bob was sharing at the same time, of like, keeping our hearts open doesn't mean we erase all, you know, differences, or kind of say, well, you know, none of this matters, because it does, it really does. But there's a lot to, you know, it's going to be a hard time ahead. And I hope that this is not just a reprieve, you know, a kind of avoiding the, you know, what might have happened, but, you know, we have it again in 4 years or 2 years or whatever. I think we all need to be engaged to do whatever we can as citizens and as caring humans. I think what we'll do, just given time now, is we'll have a short final meditation and some sharing of announcements at the end. So if we'd like to find a comfortable posture, thank you for your sharing, both in the main group and in the groups and in the chat. And letting yourself arrive and settle. Letting your attention drop down out of the head, down into the body. Feeling your body in the space where you are. Feeling the contact with the surface beneath you. Feeling the air on your skin. Maybe taking a couple of longer, deeper breaths to help settle. Inviting a sense of ease. Just opening with kindness to what's present for you right now. Saying yes to what's present, what's here. You could rest in an open awareness of whatever is arising, if that feels helpful to you. Just a kind, receptive awareness of whatever is arising in the body, the heart, the mind. Or if it's more supportive, you might just let your attention rest on your breath. And particularly if the mind is busy and active, it can be helpful to have a specific focus for your attention and see what's most helpful to you. we've all been sharing our portion of suffering and stress and difficulty. It's been a very tense time. So it could be very helpful to invite kindness and compassion towards yourself. You know, whatever you're holding, whatever you're experiencing, just wishing yourself well. You might invite on an in-breath just a wish of compassion, of kindness to yourself. Maybe putting your hand on your heart. Just caring about this being, this consciousness, caring about yourself. Could be a wish, may I be happy, may I be safe, may I be kind to myself. May I accept myself as I am. May I accept life as it is right now. Inviting that kindness, compassion towards yourself. And as you breathe out, you might breathe out compassion, kindness, loving kindness towards the world. Could be towards an individual or a few people or a whole group of people or everyone, all beings. Breathing in kindness and compassion towards yourself and breathing out compassion, kindness, care for someone or all beings. Finish with this poem by Jeff Osborne. Unmeasured, unnamed oceans, oceans of oceans out there and right here, fires, fires of living that consume and disperse us, incense for our ears. Words can barely touch the beauty of this terror, this numinous life. that poem is by Jeff, and Jeff is part of our community here. And I think, Jeff is there. Yeah, good to see you, Jeff. Thank you. Hope it's okay to share that. You shared with. Thank you. So we're going to finish with some announcements, and I have a couple of things to share. One, I'm offering a day-long retreat at the end of February. It's the last Saturday, February 27th. I think it's up on the website, or will be in the next day or so, and it'll be a day long. But you will also have the possibility of attending for half a day for the morning or the afternoon. So that'll be February 27th, Saturday, February 27th. And also to share, if anyone's new, that there's not a cost or charge for this class, but you're invited, if you're able and inclined to do so, to provide dana or generosity for the teacher, in this case for me teaching this class. And it's how the teachings have come down through 100 generations, and hopefully will continue for many generations more. So grateful for your support, and Pat has put or Christine has put the links to do that. Yeah, as well as the CML and the IMCW links. And am I passing it on now